the interview stage, and they can potentially even compromise that. So they return you the solution here, like you just run the solution npm run, and you expect it to be okay. It's the code you sent, but you haven't verified the changes they sent you back. You do npm run and it's game over. You think you're verifying a coding exercise, but you just lost your computer. So yeah, lots of things to be careful around. Fake DocuSign is very big. Yeah, like it's people, especially in the business side, just click on DocuSign pages without even realizing what it is. They get a new contract, open DocuSign, but it's very hard to compromise them this way. Bunch of other ways. I can keep going on and on and on, but that gives you a summary of social engineering techniques. The high level idea is just don't trust anything. Always double verify anything. Don't run any unsafe application on your system, and you'll be fine. How to stay from social engineering? Yeah. Be aware of different phishing campaigns. Do awareness trainings, things we just talked about. Be skeptical of any unsolicited communication. Verify identities independently. If someone says they are from Forbes, ask them to send an email from an Forbes email address. Avoid clicking suspicious links or attachment. Use strong passwords. Enable 2FA. Avoid SMS OTP. They are the least secure of the bunch. Like YubiKeys are perfectly good hardware keys, or if you don't have access to hardware keys, the ones on your mobile apps, Authy and Google Authenticator and so on, are fine as well. Keep your software updated, educate yourself and others. Limit sharing personal information, especially now that $5 wrench attacks are getting more and more common. If you don't want to lose a finger, don't post where you are. On Instagram, on your public profiles, you can post your photos and so on after you have left the place already, but just some basic OPSEC can help you stay safe. And yeah, like if you see anything suspicious, report it. Report it to your company security team, or to SEAL, or just post on Twitter. There would be a bunch of people willing to help you. Like I bet like if you just post a tweet on Twitter and you have like even 100 followers, and you say like, can anyone help me figure out if this is a scam or not? You will get good responses there. We are a helpful community. Uh, the other thing is, if they are after you, they're gonna get you one way or another. So you need to prepare a step beyond. Layers of security comes handy there. Phishing or humans are the weakest link in security always. So they should never be your only link. But it doesn't mean you shouldn't secure that link, but you should have multiple layers. Going back to the original image, another thing to notice here is, apart from phishing, like there's no hack which just happened purely because of phishing or social engineering. There is always something else involved. Phishing or social engineering is just your entry into the infra. If there are proper layers in place, you would still be fine. So what are those layers? So number one, and my most favorite one, which people still don't do, is principle of least privilege. Like if you don't need access to something, don't have the access. Like don't take on that liability. And the biggest culprits here are usually, especially in startups, where it's a bit like ego based, that okay, if I'm at a higher level than you, I should have more access. Like I should be admin of everything. It should be the opposite. Like at Polygon, I am not an admin of anything, like not a single security tool. If I need anything done, I have to create a ticket for IT. Hey, can you change the Slack channel name? I need to go through IT. I need to create a ticket. Everything gets logged, and then IT people can do it, or whoever has access in the company can do it. So yeah, just limit access to whoever needs it. Don't have super users which have access to everything. Like there should not be a single person in the company who has access to everything. Like people should have specific access for things they manage, and yeah, things just go through them. Have multiple factors of authentication always. Automated ways like 2FA via Authy and hardware keys, what we just discussed about. But also in terms of communication, if especially on Telegram, we have lately seen a lot of Telegram handles being hacked. So if you get a message from someone on Telegram, and like this at least used to be their handle, but if the request is out of the ordinary, like they're asking for money or something, just use another medium to verify their identity. Email them, call them, ask a friend, do anything except asking them on Telegram, are you real? And you would be fine. Then always, this is especially applicable to more corporate teams, which I would say is anyone over 20 people, have MDM/EDR on your devices. Um, it really helps save 90% of the attacks. Like if most of the hacks that have happened uh, with Lazarus and DPRK, if the machines that were compromised had EDR or MDM, they would have been caught. Maybe they would not have been prevented immediately, but there would have been signals sent that, okay, information is being transmitted to one of these blacklisted servers or domains, and something is up, and people would have started looking into it. So it's definitely important to have MDM/EDR, especially for big companies. The only reason I say you should start thinking about it at 20 people or so is to balance security versus just like how quick people need to move. I usually recommend companies to have one security engineer for every 20 people you have in this space. That's a good trade-off, or a good balance of security/IT engineers per cost spend on them. But yeah, definitely have it. Security monitoring and alerting, super important. If we had proper monitoring and alerting, lots of big hacks would have been prevented. Bybit hack could have saved if Safe had proper monitoring and alerting. Um, the Horizon hack, they would have realized it happened like a week before they actually did. So it's just lots of things can be saved and prevented if you have proper monitoring and alerting in place. Also, make sure you don't have any single point of failure. Like a single developer should never have access to push anything to production. Everything should go through multiple reviews and approvals and so on. Make sure what you're developing is secure from an architecture level as well. At the end of the day, we are in this crypto space, in DeFi space, because we want to trust code, we want to trust the architecture, not people. So yeah, it's yeah, you just can't eliminate people right now, but at least you can architect your things that people are just a small part of the equation, not the whole part. Minimize trust on things. Safe custody, we'll talk about this in detail. And you just have a spider sense. Like if things are going wrong, you would have that tinglish feeling. Like if something seems too good to be true, it probably is. So yeah, just never give up on your spider sense. How to custody safely. So we'll get to multisigs with this, as multisigs are a way to custody. But just talking about the basics, first things I would say is, if you don't know how to custody assets, or if you have no idea how to do key management, just use a professional custodian. Like, it's good to learn by yourself, but if you are putting millions of dollars at play, just use someone professional. Because like Coinbase Prime, Anchorage, Fireblocks, just use a proper custodian, and you would be much better off than trying to set it up all by yourself. Now let's get into a more technical space where, okay, you are not it's not your day zero in crypto space. You know the basics. You are tech savvy and you want to hold your own assets. Then number one thing you need to do is use hardware wallets. I know we have Taylor from MetaMask here, but I think she would agree as well. Use hardware wallets. Use MetaMask to use your hardware wallet, but your key should live in a hardware wallet if you are managing any significant amount of funds. And this goes without saying, but I'll say it again, because this, believe it or not, is the most common attack vector. And like most of the funds are hacked this way, just seed phrase or private key compromise. And even the big players get hacked this way. We just had one of the oracles of Lido get compromised by a key compromise. So it is still the most impactful attack vector here. But yeah, don't share your private key with anyone. Don't type it on a computer. Don't share it with support. Don't put it on in your .n file in npm. um, just keep it in a safe If it's a hotkey, say keep it in a safe vault. Just do signing. If it's a hardware wallet key, don't put it on any digital medium. Just write it down on paper. That's still the safest way, and that's fine. And also, yeah, don't type your key on Fiverr to send it to someone to print on an iron block. That's also stupid. It's if you can't CNC it yourself, don't send your key to someone else to CNC on an iron block. Yeah, connect hardware wallets via browser wallets. That just gives you another layer of security in the sense that it is much harder to compromise MetaMask than to compromise a random DeFi application you might be using and connecting your ledger to directly. So just connect via MetaMask. You verify everything is seems fine on MetaMask. Then you verify everything on your hardware wallet. If it seems fine, you move on. Uh, if possible, especially for corporates and people managing large amount of funds, use dedicated semi-air gapped devices for signing. The reason I say semi-air gapped is like what at least we try to push over at Polygon is these devices are not completely offline. That would make it very impractical to work on. They have a whitelisted set of domains they can talk to, which include domains for security updates. They include domains of safe. They include domains of some private security domains that we run on Polygon. So it's semi-air gapped in the sense it can only interact with whitelisted domains. By default, everything is blocked. Um, you can use that, or if you want to be super safe, you can also use a completely offline device. Uh, but even just using a dedicated device is a good security step, even if it's not air gapped. Usually, like if hacks happen because you mingle bad things with good things. Verify what you are signing. Use multisigs. Uh, do I have dedicated slides? Okay, so multisigs we'll talk about now. Um, so with multisigs, there are a few things. The first one is that you need to have a secure threshold for your multisig. We have had cases, for example, the ZK Sync Mint hack that happened recently. They were using a multisig of a threshold of one. So just don't do that. Maybe don't do one of one, don't do one of two, especially when you want security, additional security. Go with something like so should have TS because it's at the end of the day it's all about like usability versus security. So for small funds, use 2 by 3 or even 1 by 3 if it's very negligible amount of funds. But as things get more serious, move on to 3 by 5, 5 by 7, 9 by 11 as well in some aspects. And I think the biggest one we have at Polygon is 11 or 10 by 13, which probably you don't need unless you are managing something super critical. But yeah, just keep increasing. So have a proper threshold, number one. Number two, still use hardware wallets. So the keys within that Gnosis safe should be hardware wallets. Just don't put in your random keys in there. Always individual signers should be hardware wallets. Thirdly, verify hash on your hardware wallets. A good tool to use this is Safe TX hashes from PC. Uh, you can also use a UI that OpenZeppelin built. I'm forgetting the name, but they built a UI on top of Safe TX hashes, which is actually super handy, super useful. So use that in combination with the official UI from Safe. You can also diversify the set of hardware signing devices. Um, for your multisig. So you can have some of the signers on a mobile device using the mobile app from Safe, some on Mac machine, some on Linux, and so on, because it's much harder to compromise a diverse set of signers than just one set. You can even switch up the UIs. You can use official UI, or you can host your own version. You can use an IPFS version. You can use a completely offline version, or so on. So build a mix based on your requirements. And the important part here is having a mix. If everyone is using the same set, it kind of defeats the purpose. But yeah, just have a mix of devices here. Do not ignore failures. I know in this space, like things usually just work after failing 10 times for no reason. But when you're doing critical action, just focus on the failures as well. Figure out why something failed before retrying to sign something. Because like you don't know what's exiting from your hardware wallet. You see the error on your computer, but you don't know what exited from your hardware wallet. Maybe a perfectly fine malicious signature exited from there. So yeah, just stop and figure out what happened before moving on. um, those are some basic tips. And like, so with multisigs, safe, gnosis safe is kind of synonymous. Like if anyone talks about multisigs on Ethereum especially, they mean safe. They are um, the most trusted ones right now, but they are also the one that just got hacked a few months ago. So there are alternatives you can consider. I still recommend safe because they have improved a lot since the hack. So at least now we know, okay, now they are using a good architecture. Now they are focusing on the right things. While for the other companies, you might figure out at a later date if they are or not. So just use a safe provider. Yeah, that's the summary of it. Main basic talking points. I know Frederick has lots of questions, and I've overshot the time a little bit anyway. So we'll move on. Back to you, Frederick.
Yeah, thank you, Mudit. That was really good. Yeah, there's been a few questions in the chat as well, and if anyone else have any questions, then feel free to post them. I have a question for you, Tay. So Mudit mentioned that there are a lot of social engineering attacks happening, and there were quite a few suggestions on his list, which might be a bit maybe overwhelming for someone just starting out. So do you have any your top 3 tips of areas to focus on to prevent these social engineering attacks?
Yeah, so sorry, you guys can hear me good, right? Yes. Okay, awesome. Yeah, so there's, I guess, 2 ways to approach it. One is you become like aware and you live a very paranoid life and you have controls on devices and you have all the threat intel and all these things, right? And then that will protect you and prevent you from being socially engineered into, getting wrecked. The other option, though, is that, and in my opinion, this is actually an easier way for most people to go about it, is to just not do important money crypto things on the same device that you live on day to day. And the reason why this is can be easier, especially for newcomers, is that what it means is that even if you do get compromised, they're not going to be able to steal all your money, right? And so one thing that I think a lot of people don't realize is, your iOS devices, your iPad, your iPhones, those are just sort of inherently more secure due to the built-in sandboxing. That's a good place to do crypto stuff. It really is. If you want to run around and be crazy and download torrents and play all sorts of video games and do all these things, that should definitely not be on a device that you're also doing your work on, accessing AWS on, signing multisigs on, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then obviously like the threat intel and being paranoid and being skeptical and being aware of your surroundings and, staying up to date on these things, those are also super helpful. But if you really want, if you don't necessarily trust yourself to detect all the social engineering, the best way is to just don't let those worlds collide, right? Keep some things over here and keep other things over here. Yeah, that's I think my best advice for newcomers.
Okay, awesome. And Mudit, I think I would argue that the MDM EDR topic is a bit spicy in our ecosystem. Maybe not so much on large corporate level, but for smaller teams. And you mentioned that as well. Like if it's smaller than 20, you probably maybe shouldn't look into this. But Isaac was wondering if you have any recommendations for EDRs or MDMs, and also how complex these are generally are to implement, and what kind of costs there's usually involved with
Yeah, for
this.
sure. Yeah. So for cost purposes, they have bunch of different add-ons and pricing plans, and like it's like honestly the one of the most complex products you can buy. But you can on average get started with like $5,000 a month for the company for a small startup, and then go up from there. Um, Usually if you're just starting out, I recommend like CrowdStrike is a good one. There are a bunch of others as well. Most of them offer a managed plan. So when just starting out, I really recommend get the managed plan. So they do all of the triaging themselves for all of the issues. And as you get more comfortable with seeing, okay, what was a false positive, they whitelisted it, what was a real threat, and so on, you can take it on yourself to do it. But I find value in just letting them do all of the groundwork and us building just rules on top. So you would have to build like a bunch of whitelisted things uh, because EDRs usually don't like crypto stuff. So even if you are working on your actual blockchain no software, they might block it. So a bunch of things you would have to whitelist, bunch of DPR ke things you would have to blacklist because you can be faster in getting intel, especially if you are in Seal, Isaac, and similar groups than these bigger companies are. But overall, yeah, when you combine their coverage and your coverage, you would be in a good place. And yeah, is the EDR being SPOF is a valid concern where EDRs themselves can be a single point of failure, but there are ways around it to some extent. In the sense that one, yeah, like for signing, for signing device, you don't need to install the EDR on the signing device. Plus, you can have much more of authenticated logging on EDR. So, like any anomaly is detected in time. Plus, you don't need to give. So if you have MDM, you would usually have root access to devices, but for just EDR, you don't need to have a root access. So you can have EDR running just as an antivirus, which can read things but can't really modify things beyond a certain level. So there are different configurations that you can play with there based on your risk appetite.
Yeah, I guess also worth mentioning is that if you do go with MDM, for example, you need to be very sure that you protect the administrative accounts, since that account is likely to be able to control most of the devices in your organization. So if that specific account is then compromised, then depending on the setup, obviously, then that could have quite severe issues. You mentioned hardware wallets, and I definitely agree that this is a like very critical area, which in various discussions seem to be a bit of, I'm not sure like why the adaptation of the hardware wallets isn't like going up as quickly as it probably should be and not being utilized in these kind of critical settings. You mentioned Lido, and there's obviously multisigs and other parts where this is potentially useful to be used. I'm curious to hear both of your take on this. But say, do you have any ideas why this isn't like, why are people still using software wallets instead of hardware wallets?
I think there's, and I talk to a lot of victims of a lot of different things. I think there's two primary reasons that we see. One is that they have been fine for so long and they've never been hacked. So why would I need to upgrade my security, right? And I think this is especially common in crypto where the reality is a lot of people are security aware. A lot of people have also perhaps grown up, sort of on the edge of a lot of like deeper internet culture things. And they're aware of malware and they've probably maybe even been wrecked by malware before. But years ago in like a gaming environment or something. Now they're in crypto, they're just like, yeah, like I know what I'm doing. Like it's not also like not that bad. But the reality is that crypto threat actors, what they're going after, the malware that is specifically targeting crypto people, it's just a completely different genre, right? Like installing like a game or a skin or something in a gaming environment. It's very broad. They're just trying to like grab everything. They don't really care who you are. In crypto, you're actually being targeted, like you specifically, your colleagues. They know who you are, and it's not some general purpose thing usually. And so I think people just get a bit complacent, and especially if they haven't experienced loss yet, it's easier to just keep doing the same thing. The other one that we see a lot is that for whatever reason, their system or their processes or their whatever, like either didn't allow for hardware wallets, or it was like much harder to use a hardware wallet, or it would be another step if they had to do a hardware wallet. This usually applies to systems that have like deep integration with other systems. So for example, if you're like an exchange, obviously you can't have someone like sign every single time a user wants to withdraw, for example, right? They would be signing literally like potentially like millions of times a day. And so in that sense, sometimes, you know, as like say an exchange or another system, as they're growing and the volume is going up, they realize that they can't have all the funds in the hot wallet, but they don't necessarily fully upgrade the other systems for storage. Ideally, you want to have like a really, you want to have different layers and different sort of thresholds, right? If you're going to have $1 billion in a wallet, you should not be accessing that very much at all. And when you do, it should require a huge amount of effort to do so. If you want to have other levels that are sort of more accessible, or like, you know, you're expecting that you might need to access those funds sort of very quickly, right? Like say like within an hour, then you have to sort of like anticipate, okay, so what's the threshold that we're going to be at to be able to move those funds in an hour? And then you have to say, okay, and that's going to be a bit riskier, right? Like more people are going to have access, they're going to be moving faster, etc. Therefore, we should not keep a lot of money in this wallet, right? Either have more wallets, segregate by say assets, have a more diverse set of signers, like all of these things. And so I really encourage people to like think about, you always want to be looking at the trade-offs and the risk, right? And if you find yourself in a position where the hardware wallet seems to be a blocker to be able to do what you need to do, or how often you need to do it, the answer is probably going to be adjust like the systems and the asset totals and like what these hardware wallets are protecting before you just like write it off completely.
Yeah, right. So you could have basically a wallet which you don't interact with very frequently, which might have $1 million, which requires hardware wallets, but then from time to time you transfer a smaller amount, 50K or 100K or something, to this other wallet, which is less secure but also more agile, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And it's you know, it's going to be different for every single team, every single system, every single set of circumstances, and it's also probably going to evolve over time, right? A lot of what I do with my teams is we sit down and if there's two indicators. One is that people are moving just too quickly, things are getting signed too quickly. That's a bit of a red flag. The other hand is that the teams cannot get things signed, and they're always complaining that they can't get things signed enough. And there's like, you know, constant follow-ups on it. Both of those are red flags that your systems are just not set up in an ideal place. You might not have the right signers, the right processes, whatever, but it's a good indication that you should just, you know, spend an hour, sit down, understand the situation, and then, you know, either change the processes, change the signer, change whatever. Because the reality is that if you're in either one of those situations, meaning like you either have people just signing willy-nilly, or you just like people cannot seem to sign the transactions as needed in an emergency situation, or if something is compromised, you're going to be in trouble. So better to fix it before you get in trouble is my recommendation.
And there was a question in QA chat now, which is related to this, I guess, which is about having different types of protocols in place for different things. So in this question, it was about using a different multisig protocol for proxy upgrades compared to other types of critical transactions.
Yeah, and again, this is like, these are getting pretty in the weeds and specific. I think that you have to understand your risk. I do think that the proxy and the delegate situation is a bit rough in terms of detection. However, it also increases the security in some other ways. I think one thing that most teams are probably underutilizing at this point, which is where I would recommend, if you're going to play with like the contract implementations and sort of like the nested system of smart contracts that you have, I would definitely recommend starting with looking at like time locks over perhaps the specific implementations or how they interact or proxies or whatever. I think that time locks are vastly underutilized. And there's a couple different ways that you can do time locks where, you know, by default, everything is just like held for 24 hours. And you can basically like click the undo button, and then if no action is taken, it goes through. But you can also, you know, set that up on a faster timeline, or, you know, have other either automated or slightly automated systems that might sign off or not sign off, right? And so by having this layer of things, you're creating opportunities to click that undo button in case something goes wrong, but you're also just spread, like making the attack surface that much bigger, where if they really want to steal that million, 100 million, and $1 billion, they're going to have to like hit every single layer of the stack. And it just, it makes you that much safer because it's that much harder to compromise all those layers.
Yeah, just adding on that, definitely time lock in certain places 100% help. The more layers you can add, the better. For the proxy upgrades, though, I'm personally not a fan of adding time locks there and just contracts upgradability. This is a bit spicy topic, I would say. Like first things where like lots of people might disagree with. And like honestly, I was one of the first people to start working on upgradabilities, like structures, and had lots of tutorials and articles. But over time, like I've started to just like treat upgrade. So I've gone back and forth in this where I've been like, okay, upgradability is the best thing. Just always do it, to like everything should be non-upgradable and code is law and you should not upgrade anything. If it's deployed, it's deployed. And now I'm back at a mid level where I'd say like, okay, like we have learned that we just can't write software that is bug free. So you need upgradability when you are building something for lifetime, and you need it in emergency functions. So I don't like time lock on upgradability, but I want a super high threshold on upgradability functions, and they should be rarely used. They should not be used to add a donation function to the contract. They should only be triggered when it's absolutely mandatory with proper due diligence and so on. But without a time lock, so you don't end up in a situation where, so even the bigger protocols, Compound had a comp inflation bug where it was caught very early, but the time lock took 7 days to actually upgrade the contract, and we just sat there seeing $250 million worth of comp getting drained or something like that. Something similar almost happened with Aave. Sure how much detail they have already publicly shared, but there was a dangerous scenario detected. A patch was applied, and then for 7 days we were just crossing our fingers. Hey, like hopefully nothing goes wrong. Nothing went wrong, so that's good, but that was a close call, and you don't want to be in those situations again. And I'm sure like same thing has happened with a bunch of other protocols. So yeah, for security upgrades, don't have a multisig, don't have a multisig, have a multisig, don't have a time lock. For all other actions, yes, have a time lock. So changing some admin parameters and so on, put a time lock in front of a multisig, uh, and that works well. So yeah, I personally do treat proxy upgrade separately from other transactions.
Yeah, but that's the important call out, right? Is that you actually do have a completely different threshold and controls on the upgrade. It's not a time lock, but I think what at least one of your upgrades had like a threshold of like 12 or some crazy number, right?
Yeah, the highest one I think is 11 by 13.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is hard
It-
to achieve. So definitely need to have a secure threshold.
Yeah, and how do you
yeah.
feel about that, Mudit? Like, there is a balance, obviously, between security and usability. If you have a multisig with $10,000 in it, you probably don't want 11 out of 30 to control it. Obviously, there are different types of numbers people should be thinking about. There's a lot of different kind of security aspects that people should take into consideration as well. Maybe they shouldn't be focusing on threat intel the first thing they do. Maybe they need to focus on getting a hardware wallet or something like that. Do you have any thoughts there on like how to balance this?
Yeah, it's so every company needs to figure it out on their own. I can give general recommendation, but it's very dependent on your use case and your risk appetite. Because even for like $10,000, if I was like a high school student, I would have like 20 of my friends on that multisig if I'm saving that much amount of money. So it really depends on your situation. But in general, I would say like for up to $10,000, even a hot wallet is fine. For up to 100,000, you should have a hardware wallet, but don't need a multisig. When you go to 500,000, you definitely need a multisig with hardware wallets, and 2 by 3 is where I start. Like you can, if you want operational efficiency, you can have a 1 by 3 multisig even on $10,000. So any one of three people can transfer those 10,000. But just when talking about security, 500K, 2 by 3, couple $1 million would be 3 by 5, 10 million would be 5 by 7, 4 by 7, and like 50 million, I would say would get into the category of 9 by 11, 10 by 13, things like that. Uh, Over 100 million, similar, like up to 500 million, I think like 11 by 13 or so, it's same. If you're going over 500 million, just split it up. Like unless it's a DeFi thing, you can't split. If you are just an exchange or someone who is using it for cold storage, just split it up, put it in a different wallet. You don't need to move $500 million in a single transaction, almost never. So yeah, just don't keep that sort of amount in single wallet.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And then also like another thing that I think people perhaps forget about is like when you first start using a hardware wallet, it's like a different flow. It's the same thing for like a YubiKey, right? It's like, and it's also the same thing when you first turn on MFA. You're like, God, I have to open my Authenticator app every single time I want to log in. Oh, so annoying. But the more you do it, like the more familiar you become with it, and the more that your sort of your workflow works around it. And I think like the first like few times that you use it, it's the biggest burden, right? The same applies with multisigs and signers and the processes. If it's not, if you don't do it frequently enough, right, you're not going to be prepared to deal with an emergency situation, but it's also going to be just like a burden to you and the team. And I always think that when things are a burden, they're ripe for exploitation, right? Because people are naturally going to try to like take shortcuts or avoid the situation entirely. And so when it comes to like teams that are say rapidly growing, and the amount of money is growing from like 10K to 100K to a million sort of practically overnight, like definitely definitely have hardware wallets and start using them like full stop. But also start using multisigs. And maybe that doesn't mean switch every single thing around right this very second, right? But like the sooner that you start using these things, the sooner that you become familiar with them, the sooner you get used to the workflow and the processes that you need to do so securely, the better off you're going to be. And so often teams come into like SEAL 911 after they get racked. And one of the hardest things is basically trying to take this team sometimes 7 figures, 8 figures, 9 figures, right? Trying to take them from like 0 to 1 overnight in reaction to an incident, it's nearly impossible, right? You need to be constantly learning, constantly iterating, and constantly sort of like understanding your risk, understanding what you're capable of, what you're not capable of, adjusting things, iterating things, having conversations about these things, and understanding what works for you and what doesn't. I think that's gonna put you in the best position to be actually secure and actually not exploitable, right? Based on it becomes less about a money thing, but based on, again, like, when Mudit talks about risk tolerance, right, or risk appetite, these are the things they're really specific to you and your protocol and your team.
Okay, so like from a risk point of view, there are a lot of things that users can and should do when it comes to verifying transactions and so forth. I don't think we have like that. That alone is probably a 1 hour session on all the steps that people should be taken. A bit of a self-plug, you can go to howtomultisig.com to get this type of checklist of things that are probably good as a user to verify before signing a transaction. This isn't optimal though, in my opinion. I don't think that users should have to go through 20 different steps in order to verify that a transaction is actually what it says it is. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts about like what can be done on a protocol level or a wallet level or a DApp level to kind of improve the current UX for this to ensure that users are safe no matter if they follow all these 20 steps in order to verify it. Do you have any thoughts on how we can improve the current situation? I guess we can start with it since you are not muted.
Yeah, sure. So, okay, this would be spicy, but I put most of the blame on wallets on this one. The UX there is just a nightmare right now. Like it's getting better, but it's still far from where I can tell my granny to go do a crypto transaction. Like it's not there yet. We will get there, but we are still expecting for most transactions for users to just blind sign random things on the screen. Even when you do simulations are relatively easy to sort of switch context on. So it's very tricky problem to solve, but we definitely need more and more of security controls, more so like at a protocol level, honestly, the account abstraction EIP that just went live, which allows you to put code on the address itself, I think 7702, if I remember correctly, that has a lot of potential for good security hygiene, because then you can define rules at a protocol level for a transaction you are signing. Like if you are expecting to get like $500 for selling your 0.001 ETH, then you can define it at a contract level in the transaction. Like only move forward with this transaction if you get this money back. So you can add security that way. Same with the transfers and so on. Like it doesn't exist right now, will not exist in 3 months. It will take time, but over time, like wallets will get smart that, okay, at one level, they are seeing these are the expected impact of this transaction. They show these to the user. The user verifies, okay, yes, this is what should happen in plain English, not gibberish, not lawyerese or whatever. Um, and then smart contracts would convert it back into protocol rules, put it in code, and then submit the transaction. So actually, Ethereum verifies that what is happening is what the user signed for. and then only the transaction happens. So there are lots of things like this which we can do. We are getting there slowly. Like right now, we can't even like on our hardware wallets do clear signing. Like Ledger doesn't let you convert things into actual readable things before signing. You just have to sign gibberish there. So we are very far from perfect. I know great minds are working on this. We'll get there, but lots of things to do.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Hey,
it's
do you have any?
yeah, I know the wallets suck on this regard. For the record, we actually blame the EVM. The EVM sucks. It's not human readable. That's the issue. Okay, it's not the wallets. But the reality is, yeah, like there's a lot of things that are sort of insane about how we do things, and especially when we're talking about signatures, and especially we're talking about how transactions are constructed, but also how signatures are constructed to then make the multi-sig transaction. There's just there's a lot of work that needs to be done on that front. In terms of like, you as the end user, what are realistically, right? Like really realistically, what are some things that you can do? One thing is, again, going back to this, like, you should be familiar with a multi-sig. You should be familiar with how these things work, and you should do it in a low risk environment before you do it in a high risk environment. The more you get used to verifying the transactions on different tools and stuff, the better off you're going to be. And then I think something that is always just really apparent to me when I'm talking to teams post-exploit about specifically multi-sig stuff or signature stuff is there were often red flags, and sometimes they even detected the red flags. For example, like there were a number of errors that happened, and they continued to click sign and be confused. And a lot of times the public is like, why would you continue to sign? The answer is because errors and issues happen a lot. And they've always continued to sign and nothing bad happened, right? However, you have to create, I guess, a culture and some, I guess, self-accountability for things that are unusual, right? And like just not sort of tolerate them. If you're getting into a situation where your team is so used to errors and failures that they're not a red flag anymore, I would recommend addressing the underlying issue, whatever it may be. Maybe that's the UI that you're using, maybe that's the wallet that you're using, maybe that's the process in general that you're using. But a failure and error should be a red flag that something's wrong, and it should be something that people stop what they're doing and look into. Another thing is that people often, like in hindsight, they realize that what they were signing on their hardware wallet wasn't necessarily like the usual thing. It's not that they could necessarily read it, but it may not have been what they were used to signing, or there may have been some other indicator. And again, this goes back to, sort of like understanding what you're doing, becoming familiar with it, understanding sort of like the flow on the hardware wallet, on your computer, on the multi-sig. Of course, like you should be like verifying all this information, but even if you don't, there's a lot of opportunities for you to notice that this doesn't feel right, and this doesn't look right, and this isn't normal, right? And all those things are red flags that should make you go like, wait, hold on, let's pause, let's stop what we're doing, let's examine the situation, and then let's carry on if we're 100% sure that it's safe. And I think a lot of people there's just so many situations where people are either distracted, right, or in a rush, or the urgency of the situation, or the perceived urgency of the situation, right? Like they have to sign this thing because users get angry when withdrawals aren't processed quickly, and also I need to pick up my kid from school, right? If that's the situation, you should empower your team, and your team should be empowered to say like, hey guys, like, sorry, like, stop. I got to pick up my kid from school. People will have to wait a couple hours, but I'm not going to just click sign on this. And these are all sort of what I would consider like culture things more than security checklist things. But they all add up over time. And a lot of times those are going to be give you a better chance at not getting wrecked, right? Especially in really broad situations like multisig.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess an emerging threat here is also Francesco brought up the risk of AI moving into this space. I'm not entirely sure how they have been kind of growing into the whole drainer space and that, but it is an emerging risk for sure. Do you see any? What are you thinking about that, and what kind of like there will obviously come improvements from AI as well from a defensive point of view. Is there any like interesting tooling with that regards that you're excited about?
Yeah, on the offensive front, honestly, AI is most dangerous for the people don't have good security hygiene, because like now they are easier to target as well. When humans are doing targeted attacks, they only go for high value targets, uh, people who they have intel on and so on. So it's like very limited set of people that are being attacked. But when there is AI that can do like customized social engineering attacks, they will go for everyone. It's just the computers doing the work. It's same as like how spam emails got, like everyone gets spam. Like it doesn't matter if it's like a high net worth person or low net worth person. Same thing will happen when AI gets more and more common. More and more social engineering attacks will happen at a lower level. uh, the good thing about AI and most tech is that it gets in the hands of good people before it gets in the hand of the bad people, ignoring governments in some cases. But what that gives us is like gives us an ability to build defensive tools before the offensive tools have been built. And we are already using AI, like if you know it or not, like a lot in our analysis, anomaly detection, and so on, everywhere for security purposes. So over time, I'm more like I think like for secure folks or people who care about security, they will get more secure by AI. But people who don't care about security, unfortunately, will be a bigger or easier target through AI.
Perfect. Thank you, Mudit. I see we're almost at the hour, so we have a lot of questions still in the chat, but perhaps those can be transferred over to the Telegram chat that exists or something like that to be answered there. But yeah, there's a lot of things to cover here. Unfortunately, we can't cover all of it in 1 hour, but yeah, thank you. And Uri, I think you wanted to say something.
Yeah, so first of all, thank you, Fredrik, Mudit, and Taylor, for teaching us on such a wide array of topics and equipping us with the information to keep our funds secure. Thank you all for joining us and asking questions. And please follow us on Telegram and on Twitter. You can continue to ask more questions and be updated about next month's webinar and the DSS Security Summit itself. See you all next month. Thank you all.
Bye guys. Thanks for having me.
Bye. Thank you.